Hi folks, it's Florida Man here, bringing you an after-action report on a game I played with some folks on PlayDiplomacy.com, some of whom I've grown very familiar with. I invited a bunch of people I had enjoyed playing with previously, several of whom I have encountered multiple times. Although Big Gun wasn't in this game, there were multiple other people I knew, whether from other games on the site, the forum, or having met them in person. In particular, I've definitely met players Springbot46 and Nanook in person. I've encountered Strategus in a virtual face-to-face game, I've seen ASU Devil all over the Play Diplomacy forums, and I believe I've played games with every other player who was in the game. So it was a pretty good cast. I had gotten them together for a game I named Brave New Map. This was a variant game, taking place in a map of the Americas of the mid-19th century, when many colonies of Europe were breaking free and establishing new nations. Spain and Great Britain were struggling to keep a hold of their empires, and the United States was beginning to emerge as a great power. The variant is called War in the Americas. The game begins in the year 1841, which feels pretty different to talk about, but since the dates don't really affect gameplay, I won't go into the history relevant to the time period here. The powers that were playable on this map were Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Great Britain, Mexico, New Granada, Peru, Spain, the United States, and Venezuela. I should note, the interesting thing about the British position is that the British home centers on this map are more numerous than those of any other power, but they're scattered in 3 different regions. 2 in North America, 2 in the Caribbean, and 1 on the Falkland Islands. I should also add that I set the game up as Build Anywhere, meaning that any supply center is a home center for whoever owns it. That's a setting for the game that I really enjoy, because it means I don't have to be particularly attached to any geographic region. I can focus on just conquering everything, and not worry about defending home centers, which are normally a point of vulnerability in any game. In this particular game I played as New Granada, which is basically located where modern-day Colombia is. My most immediate neighbors were Venezuela, Peru, and Great Britain, with its centers of Jamaica and Trinidad. I started off the game by negotiating with those powers that were nearest to me, which meant those neighbors, as well as other powers that might impact those powers, such as Brazil, Chile, and Argentina, along with Spain, which controlled the islands of Cuba and Puerto Rico. Spring 1841. I managed to develop a good relationship with Peru, and I was confident I would not be attacked early on from that quarter. I also believed I had achieved a kind of accommodation with Venezuela, but I had to choose an early target, and he drew the short straw. I made a deal with Great Britain to jointly defeat Venezuela and then expand in different directions. When orders processed, I saw that we all began moving as I had planned. Peru allowed me to be the only contender for the neutral center between us, Ecuador. That was a victory of my negotiations. At the same time, I captured Panama, and I was well positioned after opening to Orinoquia to hit either one of 2 different Venezuelan home centers. Britain was poised to attack another home center of Venezuela's. In the north, Britain and the United States opened in a way that appeared mutually hostile, while Mexico and the United States appeared poised for a fight over the Texas region, just like in actual history. Unlike in actual history, this event was accompanied by Spain opening to the Gulf of Mexico, which was something I did not understand at all at the time, since it didn't really seem like it would help Spain get into a better position to contest neutral centers. In the south, Brazil opened somewhat forcefully in both north and south directions, looking poised to fight both Venezuela and Argentina at first glance. Chile opened very prudently to capture 2 neutrals without upsetting anyone. Argentina opened in a way that seemed clearly intended to fight Brazil. Peru opened in a way that would allow him to contest the neutral centers in the middle of South America, which could also be considered as an anti-Brazilian opening. A bold move by Peru. Fall 1841. I successfully took the neutral centers I had anticipated capturing, and I walked right into the Venezuelan home center of Maracaibo. Venezuela defended himself against the expected attack from me by self-bouncing in the other center I could have attacked, Angostura. Great Britain also walked into a Venezuelan home center, Caracas, while Brazil kicked Venezuela out of Manaus, which left Venezuela with only 2 centers, since he was fortunate enough to capture Georgetown on the east coast of South America. In the south, Brazil and Argentina bounced each other, and each of them failed to make progress relative to each other, while Peru captured 2 neutral centers in central positions on the map and moved toward the Galapagos, another neutral. Chile captured 2 neutrals and moved toward the 3rd neutral center of Hawaii. Britain captured Patagonia using the Falklands Fleet. In the center and the north, Britain captured Nicaragua, Greenland, and Toronto, turning Britain instantly into a 10-center power. This is actually a pretty common phenomenon on this map, I've found, which tends to make Britain look very threatening to a lot of people early on, despite the fact that Britain is really more akin to a few small powers than one large power, in terms of its geographic positioning and ability to reinforce itself. It's something the British have to carefully manage with thoughtful diplomacy and public relations, or they'll get chopped back down to size really quickly. So Britain is communicating to me in a really friendly way, trying to maintain an ally that he acquired early on by working with me against Venezuela. Elsewhere, Spain supported Mexico in taking Texas from the United States. The United States moved to capture Chicago and shifted away from Great Britain, recognizing that Spain and Mexico were the real present threat. Spain captured Haiti and Santo Domingo while winning some brownie points with Mexico, which was an impressive use of resources. One alliance has already emerged as pretty strong in the northern part of the map. Mexico captures the Yucatan and Texas this year, which made him the equal of the United States in terms of power and gave him the potential to contest what is now the western United States region. With Spain, I could easily imagine the United States being defeated, which I identified as a probable long-term problem for me, since Spain was located very close to me. In the build phase, I acquired a North Coast fleet, a West Coast fleet, and an army to give myself flexibility about where I would fight next. My thinking was that I needed to either make Spain an ally or work with Great Britain to bring Spain down, since Spain was setting himself up as the great power of the Caribbean. Spain built fleets, Britain built a whole bunch of fleets, Brazil built an army, Argentina got no builds at all, Peru got one army and one fleet, Chile did the same, Mexico built two armies, which looked really bad for the United States, since the only place those armies could go was the US. The US built one army because I'm sure he was aware Mexico was going to be a problem for him. In spring 1842, I switched sides in the military alignments that exist in the Caribbean and South America. Specifically, I support Venezuela in retaking Caracas, and I moved to go after Nicaragua, which was controlled by Britain. I moved my other armies south to go after Peru, but Peru anticipated part of this betrayal and bounced it. I also started talking Chile into turning on Peru, since Peru was a shared neighbor of ours, and Chile moved so as to be able to take Galapagos or Hawaii, with Galapagos being a neutral space Peru had just occupied. Britain decided to attack Argentina alongside Brazil, while Brazil and Argentina butted heads ineffectually. Britain also tried to move against the United States, while in the Caribbean, Spain was preparing to continue helping Mexico against the United States and attack Great Britain. Mexico moved into the neutral center of Guatemala and also prepared to reinforce Texas. In fall 1842, the United States gave up on what was clearly an attempt to retake Texas, going after the center of Alta California instead. Britain continued attacking the United States, though without capturing any centers just yet. Mexico didn't do anything aggressive against the US, and instead joined Spain in moving south to attack Great Britain in the Caribbean. I wasn't able to make progress against any enemies, except for repositioning. Chile did prevent Peru from keeping Galapagos, which was good for our positioning relative to Peru. Unfortunately, Chile also attacked Argentina, who I was hoping would work with us. Britain also tried to attack Argentina, though without success. Brazil seemed to leave Argentina alone, and they were each able to capture neutral centers without attacking each other. Spain wasn't able to capture any more centers, just like me, but we both improved our position relative to Britain. In the builds, Chile got an army, Venezuela got a West Coast fleet, Brazil got two fleets, the United States got a fleet clearly aimed at Britain, and Mexico got a West Coast fleet. In spring 1843, I continued repositioning to better attack Peru and fight Britain, but I began to regret starting a two-front war. Peru moved into a gap in my defenses to strike at my west coast, and in the south, Chile positioned to attack Peru as well, while continuing to attack Argentina. Argentina fought for his life, but without real allies, it seemed clear it would be a losing battle. Venezuela took Trinidad from Britain, Spain supported Mexico into Britain's center of Jamaica, while also taking the East Caribbean, also to better fight Britain, to my perception. Brazil joined Chile and me in going after Peru. The United States tangled with Britain, who kept bouncing with the United States in the border region, between the US and Canada. Britain was essentially ineffectual and without allies everywhere. Fall 1843. Peru and I each captured one of each other's centers. Chile took the Peruvian center Arequipa, and Brazil captured Peru's center of Santa Cruz. I attempted to take a Venezuelan center to give myself a growth boost, but he anticipated me and bounced the move. Brazil captured Georgetown from Venezuela, though, so Venezuela wouldn't have any builds despite capturing Trinidad. Mexico went all out against the United States at this point, moving everything available to the border for an invasion of California. Unfortunately for Mexico, Spain stabs him at this point, taking Yucatan and Jamaica. Britain loses ground everywhere, so he is much worse off than anyone else at this point. In the build phase, the US got an army in California, Chile got 2 armies, Brazil got a new army, and Spain got new fleets. It was clear we were about to get a big land war in the south. Spring 1844, I push Peru out of Ecuador, while Brazil supports Chile into another Peruvian center. Argentina manages to retake a center lost to Chile, while Brazil took the Falklands. Britain and the US continued clashing, with Spain also attacking Britain. Brazil moved so as to be able to take Greenland. Fall 1844, Brazil and I start attacking Chile, capturing Arequipa and La Paz from him. Brazil also supports me into a Venezuelan center, Angostura. At the same time, Mexico and Spain are fighting, Mexico and the US are fighting, and everyone, almost literally everyone, is fighting Britain. Brazil takes Greenland from him, which makes Brazil look like a massively influential power in terms of geographical spheres of influence. And that appearance isn't altogether wrong. In the build phase, I get an army and a fleet. Brazil gets 2 fleets and an army. Britain destroys almost everything except the units in North America, and Spain builds a Puerto Rico fleet. In spring 1845, Spain and I attack Venezuela and finish him off. Mexico and the US continue fighting, while Mexico also fights Spain. Chile is successfully convinced into moving north to supposedly help me fight Mexico, and Brazil and I also take Cusco from Peru. Fall 1845. Brazil takes another center from Britain, Argentina also takes a British center, I take Cusco, and I support Peru into the Galapagos. Chile is reduced to a scattered half-dozen centers. Mexico takes Alaska, while the US continues to tangle with both Britain and Mexico inconclusively. Unfortunately for Britain, this was another season when he really needed to be more concerned about Brazil than about the United States. In the build, I get more fleets. Mexico gets another army, the US also gets an army, Spain gets yet another fleet, and Brazil builds a Falklands fleet. In spring 1846, Brazil continues expanding and positioning to further attack Chile, but he also stabs me by taking Angostura. Brazil moves aggressively now in every region to which he has access, so it's pretty clear this is the moment when he begins going right for the solo. In fall, with Britain mostly dead, Spain invades the United States whilst continuing to attack Mexico. I support Chile into the Galapagos, with Brazil's attack having helped me and Chile to make up. Brazil continues attacking everyone, but he's got no allies left, having stabbed everyone. Argentina made the mistake of siding with Brazil, but Brazil also attacked even him here. In the build, Brazil gets a new Greenland fleet and several South American armies, and we all prepare to enter trench warfare. In spring 1847, the alliance of Spain, Chile, and myself begin coordinating pretty closely against Brazil. This is the way experienced players usually behave in the face of a solo threat. We even support Argentina in retaking an Argentinian center. Anything to do a little bit of damage to Brazil. In fall, Brazil still has a net gain of centers, but it's becoming clearer, I think, that it will be difficult for him to advance further. The build phase sees Brazil get 3 new fleets, but the thing is, that might not have been what he needed. Fleets are most useful on this map when you're trying to capture and hold islands or coastal centers. However, Brazil should be worried about defending the numerous centers he has in South America, and capturing the rest of my centers. He needs armies for that. In spring 1848, we continue fighting with Brazil, and he continues doing fairly well. The trust between me and Chile isn't quite perfect, since I did sort of kind of betray him twice. The moves aren't as well coordinated as they should be, and Chile is willing to risk coordinating a little worse in order to improve his individual positioning. He is for some reason worried that as soon as Brazil is gone, I'll be trying to chisel him out of the draw. Can't tell you where he got that idea. Elsewhere, Mexico is finally moving to try to help us by attacking Brazil's northern holdings. In fall 1848, we continue to lose ground to Brazil on net. However, there are areas where our position is improving, such as Mexico surrounding Greenland. In the build, Brazil gets a South American army and Greenland fleet. The latter is frankly just clearly a waste. In spring 1849, the Greenland fleet is predictably destroyed. My homeland seems to be under fairly serious Brazilian threat. Still, there is success in the Caribbean front. This is why I thought Brazil building those fleets was sort of pointless. He can't win this fight on the naval front in the Caribbean because Spain's numbers are overwhelming, and Chile can actually prevent naval advancement in the west because that naval region has multiple choke points that are basically stalemate lines in the water. On land, Chile and I fight, but Brazil is very formidable. In fall 1849, I experienced more success against Brazil's land forces, capturing Angostura and Santa Cruz. Chile doesn't really do as much against Brazil as I'd have liked, and he instead attacks Argentina alongside Brazil and eliminates him. Everyone else attacks Brazil successfully. In the build, United States gets an army, Mexico gets an Alaska fleet, I get 2 armies, Brazil gets an army, and Chile gets an army. Though I'm a little nervous about that, since it's positioned so it could be used against me or Brazil. Spring 1850, Chile actually does attack me. While the United States continues attacking Brazil, Spain joins Chile in moving to attack me, which is much more of a problem than Chile doing it on his own. In the fall, I completely stop worrying about attacking Brazil, and actually begin withdrawing units from the border with him to focus on the backstabbers. At my request, Mexico occupies Hawaii, taking it from Chile. Brazil captures Angostura. In the build phase, Brazil gets more armies. I destroy the army closest to Brazil, and the United States gets Western fleets, clearly intending to go after Mexico some more. In spring 1851, I resume defending against Brazil while also retaking Ecuador from Chile. I believe that at this point I was threatening to throw the game to Brazil if anything happened to me, which I believe was actually within my power to do. It helps that Brazil moves aggressively against Chile this season. The United States is attacking Mexico as his builds indicated. Spain does almost nothing, but does take a Mexican center and a Chilean center without moving all its units away from my coast, although completely moving away to my satisfaction might have been impossible. I think he was somewhat persuaded by my threat. In fall, I believe Brazil semi-unintentionally helps me out by resuming very clearly attacking Chile. This is both expanding Brazil, which makes it clearer that we need to hold together strongly against him, and also putting the final nails in Chile's coffin. I also gain ground relative to Chile this season. In the build phase, Brazil and I each get 1 fleet and 1 army. The next year is breaking down Mexico and Chile, which leaves the dominant powers of the United States, Brazil, Spain, and my New Granada. At this point, we agreed to a 4-power draw, partially because I think we were all fatigued, but perhaps most importantly because Brazil, who was still the board topper, had repeatedly made his solo attempts, and I think we all agreed he was going to fail in any further such attempts. Brazil had lost the advantage and momentum, and with so few powers left, coordinating against him would have been relatively easy. I was the second largest power, but I had no illusions that I was anywhere near as well positioned as Brazil to try for a solo, and since I had felt that I was circling the drain only a couple of years before the game ended, I was pretty relieved to be in a draw by the end. I think the final few years of the game were a bit of a cautionary tale about the dangers of looking for revenge, because that was Chile's big downfall. If Chile hadn't wanted to get back at me for my earlier betrayals, and had continued working with me against Brazil instead, we would have certainly both been part of any draw, and Brazil could have been eliminated, which would have been a pretty satisfying achievement for everyone other than Brazil. I hope you enjoyed this after-action report, which took hours of blood, sweat, and tears to make. The blood was spilled by many Brazilian soldiers on a fictional map, and the tears were mostly Chilean, but the sweat was mine. You can acknowledge my efforts by liking, subscribing, and maybe even supporting me on Patreon, like half of the people whose names are now on screen. We also appreciate comments, which boost the video in the algorithm and make it more likely that fellow diplomacy fans will discover Florida Man Diplomacy. Until next time, Florida Man out.